I opened my husband's briefcase looking for his insurance card and found an expensive bottle of women's perfume hidden inside. I didn't say a word. I just secretly replaced it with concentrated skunk extract, and what happened next caused such chaos at his office that security had to evacuate the entire building. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story from. I want to know how far it's traveled. I was standing in our bedroom. The afternoon light streaming through the curtains felt wrong somehow, too bright for the darkness I was beginning to sense in my life. The silence in our house had become oppressive lately, heavy with unspoken truths. Our antique grandfather clock in the hallway, a gift from my grandmother, ticked with a steady, judgmental rhythm. Each tick felt like an accusation, a reminder that time was revealing secrets I wasn't ready to face. My husband Richard had just left for another late evening at the office, his third one this week. He looked distracted, nervous even, like a man carrying the burden of lies too complicated to remember. His face had changed over the past few months, new tension lines around his mouth, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. He grabbed his leather briefcase with unusual urgency, kissed my forehead without really looking at me, a gesture that felt more like habit than affection, and rushed out the door. The smell of his cologne lingered in the air, but there was something else mixed with it now, a sweet, floral scent that definitely wasn't his, and definitely wasn't mine. 10 minutes later, I heard his car pull back into the driveway. The engine cut off. I heard him curse under his breath from the hallway. He came back inside, frustrated, running his hand through his hair. "Forgot my damn phone," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Can't believe I did that." He grabbed it from the kitchen counter where he'd left it charging, checked the screen quickly, his fingers moving with practiced speed, and left again without another word. No goodbye kiss this time. No explanation about where exactly he was going or who he was meeting, just the sound of the door closing and his car pulling away, leaving me alone with my growing suspicions. I stood there in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. Something wasn't right. Richard had been different lately, distant, secretive, always on his phone, always with an excuse for why he needed to work late, always coming home smelling like that perfume. A perfume I didn't own and had never worn. I walked slowly to our bedroom. His briefcase sat on the bed where he'd tossed it during his rushed return. The expensive leather briefcase I'd given him for our 20th anniversary. He never went anywhere without it. He treated it like it contained nuclear launch codes, always protective, always careful about who touched it. My heart pounded as I approached it. This felt wrong, invasive, a violation of trust. But then again, what trust was left? I unlatched the brass clasps, the sound echoing in the quiet room like a gunshot. Inside were the usual things: his laptop, some manila folders, pens, his reading glasses. But tucked into a side pocket, wrapped carefully in tissue paper, was something that made my blood run cold. A bottle of perfume, not just any perfume. Chanel No. 5, the expensive kind that costs $150 for a small bottle. The kind Richard had never once bought me in 25 years of marriage. The tissue paper was pristine, carefully wrapped, the kind of care you take with a gift for someone special. I picked it up with trembling hands. The bottle was full, unused. There was a small card attached with a ribbon. I opened it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely read the elegant handwriting. "For making every moment special. Thank you for understanding. R.R. for Richard." My Richard. Buying expensive perfume for someone who wasn't me. Thanking someone for understanding in a way that suggested intimacy, shared secrets, a relationship I knew nothing about. I sat down heavily on the bed, still holding the perfume bottle. The room spun around me. 25 years of marriage, 2 children we'd raised together, a life I thought we'd built on trust and commitment. All of it suddenly felt like a lie, a beautiful facade hiding something ugly underneath. I wanted to cry, to scream, to throw the bottle against the wall and watch it shatter, but instead, I did something else. I took out my phone and snapped pictures. The perfume, the card, the tissue paper, everything. Evidence. Proof. documentation of the moment my world started crumbling. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it, closed the briefcase, and walked out of the room. My mind was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to think. I needed a plan. Because if Richard was cheating on me, if he was buying expensive gifts for another woman, I wasn't going to just cry and accept it. I was going to find out the truth, the whole truth, no matter how much it hurt. That evening, I sat in our living room pretending to watch television, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought about our marriage, trying to remember when things had changed. Had it been gradual or sudden? When had Richard started coming home late? When had the perfume smell first appeared? When had he stopped really looking at me, really seeing me? I thought about our children. Mark was 23, working in Chicago. Sarah was 21, finishing college in Boston. They were grown, independent, building their own lives. Had Richard waited for them to leave before starting his affair? Had he been that calculated, that patient? My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Going to be later than I thought, don't wait up. Meeting running long." A meeting. Always a meeting. I texted back, "Okay, be safe." But I wasn't okay. And he wasn't safe, because I was about to become very dangerous. I waited until midnight. Richard still wasn't home. I went to our bedroom, opened his briefcase again, and took out the perfume bottle. I held it up to the light, studying it like it was evidence in a crime scene, which in a way it was. Then I went to my computer and started researching. I needed to know everything about this perfume, where it was sold, how much it cost, what kind of woman wore it. I needed to understand who my competition was, who had stolen my husband's attention, and apparently his money. But more importantly, I needed a plan. And as I sat there in the glow of my computer screen, an idea began to form. A terrible, perfect idea. The next morning, I woke up early. Richard had come home at 2 a.m., stumbling into bed, reeking of wine and that damn perfume. He didn't even try to shower first, didn't care anymore if I noticed. That's when I knew for certain. He wasn't just having an affair. He was getting careless, confident, convinced I was too naive or too trusting to ever question him. I made breakfast like always. Eggs, toast, coffee, the routine of a 25-year marriage. Richard came down at 7, looking exhausted, his tie loose, his shirt wrinkled from sleeping in it. "Morning," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "Morning," I replied, my voice steady, normal. "Coffee's ready." He poured himself a cup, checked his phone, typed something quickly, and set it face down on the table. Always face down now, always protecting his secrets. "I have another late meeting tonight," he said, still not looking at me. "Thompson wants to review the quarterly reports. Could take hours." Thompson, his boss. A man I'd met dozens of times at company functions. A man who, I suddenly remembered, was currently on vacation in Florida with his wife. I knew this because his wife had posted pictures on Facebook just yesterday. "That's fine," I said sweetly. "I'll save you a plate." He nodded, gulped down his coffee, grabbed his briefcase, and left. I watched through the kitchen window as he drove away, and then I grabbed my car keys and my purse. I had work to do. My first stop was Mrs. Henderson's house. She lived 3 doors down and had been my friend for 15 years. She was also a retired private investigator who now spent her time gardening and solving crossword puzzles. "Eleanor," I said when she opened the door, "I need your help." She took one look at my face and stepped aside. "Come in, I'll make tea." We sat in her kitchen surrounded by potted plants and cat photos, and I told her everything. The perfume, the late nights, the lies. She listened without interrupting, her experienced eyes watching me with understanding and something that looked like anger on my behalf. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "Months, I think. Maybe longer. I don't know how I missed it." "You trusted him," she said simply. "That's not a flaw, Eleanor. That's what marriage is supposed to be." "What do I do?" She thought for a moment, then went to her desk and pulled out a business card. "This is my former partner, James Chen. He still does private investigation work. He can follow Richard, document everything, get you the proof you need for a divorce lawyer. I took the card, my hand trembling slightly. Thank you. Eleanor, she said, her voice gentle but firm, whatever you're planning, and I can see you're planning something, be careful. I know that look. I had that look when I found out about my ex-husband. What did you do? I asked. She smiled grimly. I made sure he regretted ever taking me for granted, but I also made sure everything I did was legal. Revenge is one thing. Prison is another. I called James Chen from my car. He answered on the second ring, his voice professional and sympathetic. I explained the situation, trying to keep my voice steady, trying not to sound like a hysterical wife, even though that's exactly how I felt. Mrs. Morrison, I can start surveillance today. My rate is $200 an hour plus expenses. I'll need a retainer of $2,000. The money was a problem. Richard controlled our finances, but I had my own small savings account from my part-time work at the library, money I'd been setting aside for years. Money I'd planned to use for a trip to Italy we'd always talked about taking. Well, those plans had changed. I'll transfer the money this afternoon, I said. When can you start? I'll be outside your husband's office in an hour. True to his word, James sent me his first update at 3 p.m., a photo of Richard leaving his office building with a woman. She was younger than me, maybe 35, with long dark hair and a professional outfit that screamed executive. They walked close together, not touching but intimate in their body language, the way people are when they're comfortable with each other, when they share secrets. My hands shook as I zoomed in on the photo. She was beautiful in that polished, perfect way that comes from expensive salons and personal trainers. Everything I wasn't anymore at 50 years old with gray hair I'd stopped coloring and 20 extra pounds I'd stopped trying to lose. Another photo arrived, Richard and the woman entering a wine bar downtown. Another photo, them sitting close in a corner booth, laughing. Another photo, Richard reaching across the table to hold her hand. I felt sick, but I also felt something else, rage, cold, calculating rage. I went to my closet and pulled out a box from the top shelf. Inside was a bottle of concentrated skunk extract I'd bought years ago when we had a skunk problem in our yard. The wildlife removal company had left it behind, saying we could use it as a deterrent if the skunks came back. I'd kept it, forgotten about it, until now. I held the bottle up to the light. The liquid inside was innocuous-looking, clear like water. But I remembered the smell from when I'd accidentally opened it once. It was overwhelming, nauseating, the kind of smell that sticks to everything and everyone, impossible to wash out. I smiled. It was perfect. That night, while Richard was at his meeting, I carefully opened the Chanel perfume bottle. The real perfume smelled expensive, floral, sophisticated. Everything his mistress probably was. I poured it down the sink, watching it swirl away, then thoroughly cleaned the bottle with dish soap. Then I carefully, very carefully, poured the skunk extract into the perfume bottle. It looked identical. Same clear liquid, same level. You couldn't tell the difference just by looking at it. I sealed it, wrapped it back in the tissue paper, replaced the card, and put it back in Richard's briefcase exactly where I'd found it. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, Richard left for work at his usual time. I waited an hour, then drove to the parking garage across from his office building. I sat in my car with a clear view of the main entrance, my phone in my hand, waiting. James Chen called at 10:30 a.m. Mrs. Morrison, your husband just met the woman in the lobby. They're heading up to his office together. Thank you, James. I'll take it from here. I waited. My heart pounded. Part of me wondered if I was crazy, if I was going too far. But then I remembered the perfume, the lies, the 25 years I'd given this man, and I knew I wasn't going too far. I was going exactly as far as I needed to. At 11 a.m., my phone rang. It was the main number for Richard's company. I answered. Mrs. Morrison, this is security at Bradford Tower. There's been an incident involving your husband. We need you to come down here immediately. What kind of incident? I asked, trying to sound worried instead of satisfied. There's been a chemical contamination in his office. The fire department is here. Your husband and a colleague have been affected." I drove to the tower, parked, and walked into chaos. The entire lobby was being evacuated. People were streaming out of the elevators, covering their noses, complaining about a terrible smell. Security guards in the lobby looked overwhelmed, trying to direct people outside. I saw Richard and his mistress being escorted out by 2 firefighters in full gear. Even from 50 feet away, even in the outdoor air, I could smell them. The skunk extract had done its job magnificently. Richard's suit was ruined, his hair matted, his face red with embarrassment and fury. The woman was crying, her expensive dress clinging to her, her perfect hair destroyed, mascara running down her face. A fire captain approached me. "Mrs. Morrison, your husband needs to go to the hospital to be checked for chemical exposure. Do you want to ride with him?" I looked at Richard. He looked back at me, and in that moment he knew. He knew I'd done this. He knew I'd found out, and he knew he was caught. "No," I said calmly. "I'll meet him there." But I didn't go to the hospital. I went home, packed 2 suitcases with Richard's clothes, and set them on the front porch. Then I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. Then I called my lawyer, a woman Mrs. Henderson had recommended, and told her I needed to file for divorce immediately. By the time Richard came home that evening, still reeking despite multiple showers at the hospital, his clothes were on the porch and the locks were changed. I watched through the window as he tried his key, then pounded on the door. I opened it but kept the chain on. "Your clothes are on the porch. You can sleep at a hotel. My lawyer will send you divorce papers tomorrow." "Eleanor, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been having an affair? That you bought expensive perfume for another woman while I've been wearing the same bottle of drugstore perfume for 5 years? That you've been lying to me for months?" His face crumbled. "How did you know?" "I found the perfume in your briefcase, the one you were planning to give to her. Tell me, Richard, did she enjoy it?" His eyes widened. You replaced it. That was you. Do you have any idea what you've done? The entire building had to be evacuated. Her office, my office, the whole floor is contaminated. It's going to cost thousands to clean. The company is threatening to fire me." "Good," I said coldly. "Maybe you should have thought about consequences before you decided to cheat on your wife. Maybe she should have thought about it before she decided to sleep with a married man. You both got exactly what you deserved." "Eleanor, please. I made a mistake. I'll end it. We can fix this." "No, Richard. We can't." "Because you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Every day you lied to me. Every night you came home late. Every time you looked me in the eye and smiled while smelling like her perfume. You made a choice. And now I'm making mine." I closed the door. He kept knocking, kept calling my name, but I ignored him. Eventually he gave up, collected his suitcases, and left. I sat in my living room in the house I'd helped make a home and felt the weight of 25 years settle on my shoulders. I should have felt triumphant. I'd exposed Richard. I'd humiliated his mistress. I'd gotten my revenge. But instead, I just felt tired, sad, and strangely empty. The next few weeks were a blur. My lawyer, Patricia Webb, was efficient and ruthless. She filed the divorce papers and included James Chen's surveillance photos as evidence of adultery. In our state, that meant Richard would have a harder time getting an equal split of assets. "He's going to fight this," Patricia warned me. "Men like him always do. They think they can charm their way out of consequences." "Let him fight," I said. "I have evidence. I have proof. And I have nothing to lose anymore." Richard did fight. His lawyer sent angry letters claiming I'd destroyed company property, endangered lives, caused emotional distress. They threatened to file criminal charges for the skunk extract incident. Patricia laughed when she read those letters. Empty threats. He'd have to admit why the perfume was in his briefcase in the first place. He'd have to explain who it was for and why. No judge would take his side once they heard the full story. She was right. When we finally had our first court hearing, Richard's lawyer barely mentioned the skunk extract incident. Instead, they tried to argue that the affair had been brief, meaningless, a moment of weakness. They painted Richard as a remorseful husband who deserved a second chance. Patricia destroyed that narrative with the surveillance photos. Dates and times showing the affair had lasted at least 8 months. restaurant receipts Richard had expensed to the company, claiming they were business dinners when they were actually dates with his mistress, hotel receipts, love notes she'd sent him that he'd been stupid enough to keep in his briefcase. The judge was a woman in her 60s who listened to everything with a face like stone. When Richard's lawyer finished, she looked directly at Richard. "Mr. Morrison, you lied to your wife for 8 months. You used company funds to finance an extramarital affair. You bought expensive gifts for your mistress while your wife worked part-time at a library to help make ends meet. And when you got caught, you tried to blame her for defending herself. Is that an accurate summary?" Richard's face went red. "Your Honor, I made mistakes, but—" "Yes or no, Mr. Morrison?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then I'm granting Mrs. Morrison's petition for divorce on grounds of adultery. We'll have a hearing on asset division in 30 days, but I'm inclined to award Mrs. Morrison the house, half of all retirement accounts, and spousal support. Your lawyer can file objections, but given the evidence presented today, I doubt they'll succeed." I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. Not happy, not victorious, but lighter, like I'd shed something heavy and toxic. Patricia walked beside me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Eleanor, you did it. You protected yourself. You got justice." "I got revenge," I corrected. "Justice and revenge aren't the same thing." "Maybe not," she agreed, "but sometimes revenge is necessary to get to justice." The divorce was finalized 3 months later. I got the house, half of everything, and enough spousal support to live comfortably. Richard got his condo, his regrets, and a reputation around town as a cheater who got exactly what he deserved. The mistress, whose name I learned was Vanessa, lost her job at Richard's company. Apparently, having an affair with a colleague and causing a building-wide evacuation was grounds for termination. Last I heard, she'd moved to another state to escape the gossip and the smell that people swore still lingered around her. Richard tried to contact me a few times. Apologetic texts, flowers delivered to my door, a handwritten letter explaining how sorry he was, how he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, how he wanted to try again. I threw the flowers in the garbage, I burned the letter, and I blocked his number. Because here's what Richard never understood. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the lying. It was about the disrespect. It was about spending money on another woman while I wore the same clothes year after year. It was about making me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong when my instincts were right all along. It was about 25 years of my life that I'd given to him, believing he was giving the same to me, only to discover he'd been giving it to someone else. My children were devastated when they found out. Mark flew home from Chicago, ready to confront his father. Sarah cried for days, mourning the family she thought she had, but eventually they understood. They saw the surveillance photos, they read the evidence, and they chose my side because it was the right side. "Mom," Sarah said one night as we sat on the porch, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry Dad did this to you. I'm sorry our family fell apart." "Sweetheart, our family didn't fall apart. Your father broke it. There's a difference. You and Mark and I, we're still family. We're still here. He's the one who chose to leave." 6 months after the divorce was final, I was cleaning out the garage and found Richard's old briefcase, the one I'd given him for our anniversary. He'd never come back for it, probably couldn't stand to use it anymore, couldn't look at it without remembering what had happened. I opened it one last time, empty except for a business card that had fallen into the lining. I pulled it out. It was for a jewelry store downtown. On the back, in Richard's handwriting, was a note. "Engagement ring, $5,000, for V." An engagement ring. He'd been planning to leave me, planning to marry her, planning a whole future while I sat at home believing in our past. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who'd dodged a bullet, who'd escaped something worse than what had already happened, because if I hadn't found that perfume, if I hadn't acted, I would have been blindsided. I would have come home one day to find Richard packing, leaving, moving on to his new life while I stood there confused and destroyed. Instead, I'd taken control. I'd protected myself. I'd fought back. I threw the briefcase in the garbage, business card and all. That part of my life was over. Done. Finished. I started focusing on myself. I joined a book club at the library where I worked. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was too busy taking care of Richard. I lost the weight I'd been carrying, not to look good for anyone else, but because it felt good to take care of myself. I traveled. I went to Italy, that trip Richard and I had always planned but never taken. I went alone, and it was glorious. I ate pasta in Rome, toured the Vatican, stood in front of the Trevi Fountain, and threw in a coin, wishing not for love, but for peace. I made new friends, women who understood what it was like to rebuild after betrayal. We called ourselves the Phoenix Club, rising from the ashes of failed marriages and broken trust. We met every Thursday for wine and solidarity. 1 year after the divorce, Mrs. Henderson invited me to her garden party. It was a beautiful day, warm but not too hot, perfect for being outside among her flowers. "Eleanor," she said, pulling me aside, "I want you to meet someone. This is David. He's my nephew. He just moved here from Seattle." David was 52, recently divorced himself, with kind eyes and an easy smile. We talked for hours that day, discovering we had a lot in common. Similar tastes in books and movies, similar sense of humor, similar scars from similar betrayals. "So what happened with your ex-wife?" I asked carefully. "She had an affair with her personal trainer," he said, no bitterness in his voice, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement. I found out when he accidentally sent me a text meant for her. It was detailed, very detailed. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It hurt at the time, but looking back, I'm grateful. I was in a marriage that looked good on paper but felt empty in reality. Sometimes it takes a betrayal to show you that you deserve better." "That's very mature of you." He laughed. "I wasn't mature about it at first. I did some things I'm not proud of. Nothing illegal," he added quickly, seeing my expression, "but definitely petty. I may have signed her up for every junk mail list I could find. She's probably still getting catalogs for senior citizen products and pet supplies, even though she's only 45 and doesn't have any pets." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. I replaced my ex-husband's gift perfume with skunk extract. His eyes widened. "That's diabolical." It contaminated his entire office building. "That's brilliant." We exchanged phone numbers that day. We started having coffee together, then dinner, then long walks where we talked about everything and nothing. We took it slow, both of us too scarred to rush into anything, but there was something there. Something real. Something based on honesty and respect, not lies and betrayal. 2 years after my divorce, I stood in my kitchen making coffee and looked around at my life. My house was mine. My days were mine. My choices were mine. I'd survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I'd come out stronger. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Still on for dinner tonight? I'm cooking." I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Another text, this time from Sarah. "Mom, I'm bringing my new boyfriend home next weekend. Can't wait for you to meet him. Love you." I replied, "Love you too, sweetheart. Can't wait." One more text from Mark. "Hey Mom, just wanted to say I'm proud of you. You're a badass." I laughed and replied, "Language, young man, but thank you." The doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery person with a large box. "Delivery for Eleanor Morrison." I hadn't ordered anything. I signed for it and brought it inside. The return address was from Richard's new condo. I opened it carefully. Inside was the Chanel No. 5 perfume bottle, thoroughly cleaned and restored, with a note. "Eleanor, I know I can never apologize enough for what I did. I know I destroyed 25 years of trust and love. I know I hurt you in ways I can never take back. This perfume started everything. I'm sending it back to you clean. Like I wish I could make everything clean again. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I regret every moment of every lie. You deserved better. You always deserved better. I hope you found it. Richard." I held the perfume bottle in my hands. It was beautiful, expensive, exactly the kind of thing I'd wanted Richard to buy me for years. But now it didn't matter. Now I didn't need his gifts or his apologies or his regrets. I walked to the kitchen, opened the bottle, and poured the perfume down the sink, just like I'd done 2 years ago, watched it swirl away. Then I threw the bottle in the recycling bin. But as I stood there, staring at the empty sink, memories flooded back. Memories I'd tried to suppress, moments I'd tried to forget. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Richard and I had shared breakfast for 25 years, and let myself remember everything. I remembered the early days of our marriage. I was 25, fresh out of graduate school with my library science degree. Richard was 27, ambitious, charming, full of plans for our future. We'd met at a bookstore where I was working part-time. He'd come in looking for a business book, and I'd helped him find it. We'd talked for an hour about books, about dreams, about life. He'd asked for my number before he left. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant. Richard had been nervous, spilling wine on the tablecloth, talking too fast, making me laugh. He'd walked me home, kissed me goodnight on my doorstep, and told me he thought I was the most interesting woman he'd ever met. We'd gotten married 2 years later in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. My mother had cried. Richard's father had made a toast about finding the right partner in life. We'd danced to "The Way You Look Tonight" while everyone watched and smiled. Our honeymoon was a road trip along the coast. We'd stayed in cheap motels, eaten at diners, laughed at terrible jokes, made love like newlyweds do. Richard had been attentive, loving, excited about our future together. He'd held my hand as we drove, talking about the house we'd buy, the children we'd have, the life we'd build together. And for a while, we'd built it. Mark was born 3 years into our marriage. Richard had been there for the birth, holding my hand through the contractions, cutting the umbilical cord, crying when he held our son for the first time. "We made a person," he'd whispered in awe. "We actually made a person." Sarah came 2 years later, another beautiful moment, another milestone in what I thought was our beautiful life together. Richard had been promoted at work. We'd bought our house, the one I was still living in. We'd planted a garden, painted rooms, hung pictures. We'd been a family, but somewhere along the way things had changed. Richard had gotten promoted again and again. His hours got longer. His stress got higher. He started traveling for work, coming home late, always exhausted, always preoccupied. I'd tried to be understanding. I'd supported his career, raised our children, kept our home running smoothly. I'd put my own career on hold. My library degree had led to a part-time position at the local library, but I'd never pursued full-time work because someone needed to be home for the kids. Someone needed to make sure homework got done, dinner got cooked, laundry got washed. Richard's career was important, I'd told myself. Someone had to sacrifice, and I was willing to be that person. But had Richard appreciated that sacrifice? Had he valued what I'd given up for our family? Or had he just taken it for granted, assumed it was my duty, my role, my place? I thought about the signs I'd missed over the years, the way Richard had gradually stopped complimenting me, the way our conversations had become surface level, just logistics and schedules, the way our physical intimacy had dwindled to almost nothing, the way he'd started going to the gym obsessively, buying new clothes, getting haircuts more frequently. I'd noticed all of it, but I'd explained it away. He was getting older, caring more about his health. He was successful at work, wanted to look professional. He was tired from long days, stress from big projects. I'd made excuses for him, given him the benefit of the doubt, trusted him when maybe I should have questioned more. The affair with Vanessa wasn't the first betrayal. The first betrayal had been gradual, subtle, a slow erosion of our partnership. Every time Richard had chosen work over family, every time he'd missed a school play or a parent-teacher conference, every time he'd been physically present but emotionally absent, those were all small betrayals, adding up over the years until the foundation of our marriage was so weak that one affair could crumble it completely. But I'd stayed. I'd stayed because I believed in marriage vows. I'd stayed because I didn't want to disrupt our children's lives. I'd stayed because I was afraid of being alone, of starting over, of admitting that the life I'd built wasn't as solid as I'd thought. I'd stayed because I loved Richard, or at least I loved the memory of who he'd been, the potential of who he could be again if only I tried hard enough. And then I'd found that perfume bottle, that expensive, carefully wrapped perfume bottle meant for another woman. And something in me had just broken. Or maybe it had finally woken up. Maybe I'd finally realized that I deserved better than this, that I deserved more than being taken for granted, lied to, replaced. The skunk extract had been petty, yes, juvenile maybe, but it had also been powerful. It had been my way of saying, I see you, I know what you did, and you don't get to do this without consequences. It had been my way of taking back some power in a situation where I'd felt completely powerless. I remembered the day of the evacuation like it was yesterday. Standing in that parking garage, watching the chaos unfold, seeing Richard and Vanessa stumble out of the building covered in that terrible smell. Part of me had felt guilty, but a bigger part had felt vindicated, satisfied, like justice had finally been served. The divorce had been painful but necessary. Sitting in that lawyer's office, signing papers that ended 25 years of marriage, had felt surreal. Patricia had been professional, efficient, kind in her own way. She'd fought for me when I didn't have the energy to fight for myself. She'd made sure Richard couldn't manipulate the situation, couldn't use his charm and his lawyer to make me seem like the villain. The court hearings had been worse. Sitting across from Richard in formal courtrooms, listening to his lawyer paint me as unhinged, vindictive, dangerous. Watching Richard pretend to be the victim, the wronged party, the husband whose wife had overreacted to a simple mistake. It had taken everything in me not to scream, not to jump up and tell the judge exactly what kind of man Richard really was. But Patricia had been prepared. She'd presented the surveillance photos methodically, one after another. Richard entering restaurants with Vanessa. Richard holding Vanessa's hand. Richard kissing Vanessa in a hotel parking lot. 8 months of documented evidence that this wasn't a mistake, wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a calculated, ongoing deception. She'd presented the financial records showing the money Richard had spent on Vanessa. Expensive dinners charged to his company card and falsely labeled as business expenses. Hotel rooms, gifts, the $5,000 engagement ring he'd apparently been planning to buy her. All while I'd been clipping coupons and shopping at discount stores to make our household budget work. The judge had seen through Richard's act. She'd been fair but firm, awarding me what I deserved, protecting my interests. Walking out of that final hearing with my divorce decree in hand had felt like being released from prison. I was free. Finally. Completely free. But freedom had been scary at first. After 25 years of defining myself as Richard's wife, as Mark and Sarah's mother, as part of a unit, being alone had felt disorienting. Who was I without those labels? What did I want? What did I enjoy? I'd spent so long taking care of everyone else that I'd forgotten how to take care of myself. The first few months had been the hardest, living alone in the house that had once been full of family, eating dinner by myself, waking up to an empty bed. No one to talk to, no one to share mundane details with, no routine or structure beyond what I created for myself. I'd cried a lot those first few months. Not for Richard, not really, but for what I'd lost, for the life I thought I had, for the future I'd imagined, for the comfortable familiarity of marriage, even a flawed one. Change is hard even when it's necessary, but slowly, gradually, I'd started to find myself again. Or maybe I'd started to find a new version of myself, one that had been buried under years of compromise and accommodation. I'd started saying yes to things that interested me without checking with anyone else first. I'd started making decisions based solely on what I wanted, not what someone else needed. The book club had been my first step, a group of women who met weekly to discuss novels and drink wine and talk about life. They'd welcomed me warmly, included me in their conversations, laughed at my jokes. I'd felt valued there, appreciated, seen in a way I hadn't felt in my marriage for years. The painting classes had been next. I'd always loved art but never had time to pursue it. Now I had time. I had all the time in the world. I'd bought canvases and brushes and paints, set up a small studio in what used to be Richard's home office, and spent hours creating. My paintings weren't masterpieces, but they were mine. They reflected my emotions, my healing, my journey. The weight loss had been a side effect of finally prioritizing myself, not starving myself or following fad diets, just taking care of my body in ways I'd neglected for years. Walking every morning, eating food I enjoyed that also nourished me, sleeping better because I wasn't stressed and anxious all the time. The pounds had come off gradually, and with them came energy, confidence, strength. The trip to Italy had been transformative. Traveling alone had terrified me at first. What if I got lost? What if something went wrong? What if I was lonely? But I'd booked the flight anyway, packed my bags, and gone. And it had been magical. Walking through Rome without having to consult anyone else about where to go or what to see. Eating gelato for breakfast because I wanted to. Sitting in cafes and sketching. Talking to strangers from all over the world. Being anonymous, free, completely myself. I'd thrown my coin in the Trevi fountain and made a wish. Not for love, not for reconciliation, but for peace. For the ability to let go of anger and resentment. For the strength to keep moving forward. For joy in whatever came next. The Phoenix Club had been Mark's idea, actually. He'd read about divorce support groups and suggested I join one. I'd resisted at first, not wanting to be defined by my divorce, not wanting to sit around complaining about men and failed marriages. But I'd gone to one meeting out of curiosity, and I'd found something unexpected. Friendship, solidarity, women who understood exactly what I was going through because they'd been through it themselves. We called ourselves the Phoenix Club because we were all rising from the ashes of something that had burned us. Maria had been married for 30 years when her husband left her for a younger woman. Janet's husband had gambled away their retirement savings. Diane's husband had been emotionally abusive for decades before she'd finally found the courage to leave. We were all different, but we were all survivors, all fighters, all determined to build better lives for ourselves. We met every Thursday evening at a wine bar downtown. We'd share stories, offer advice, celebrate victories, commiserate over setbacks. We'd become more than a support group. We'd become friends, real friends who genuinely cared about each other's well-being. Meeting David had been unexpected. I'd gone to Mrs. Henderson's garden party with no expectations, no agenda beyond enjoying a beautiful day and supporting my friend. David had been there, new to town, recently divorced himself, with kind eyes and an easy laugh. We'd started talking about books, discovered we'd both recently read and loved the same novel, and the conversation had flowed naturally from there. He'd told me about his divorce with refreshing honesty. No bitterness, no blame, just acknowledgement that his marriage had run its course, that he and his ex-wife had grown apart, that the affair had been a symptom of deeper problems, not the cause. I'd appreciated his maturity, his self-awareness, his ability to take responsibility for his part in the failure of his marriage. I'd told him about Richard and the skunk extract, worried he'd think I was crazy or vindictive. Instead, he'd laughed and shared his own petty revenge story. That junk mail subscription had been harmless but satisfying, his way of taking back a small bit of power in a situation where he'd felt powerless. I'd understood that completely. We'd started slow, coffee dates, dinner occasionally, long walks where we'd talk about everything and nothing. No pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company and seeing where things might go. It had been refreshing after 25 years of marriage where everything had become routine, predictable, stale. David made me laugh. He listened when I talked. He was interested in my opinions, my thoughts, my experiences. He valued me as a person, not as a wife who was supposed to fulfill certain roles and duties. He was a partner, not a dependent. He contributed equally to our relationship. Didn't expect me to do all the emotional labor or make all the accommodations. With David, I felt like I could breathe. Like I could be myself without judgment or criticism, like my worth wasn't determined by how well I served someone else's needs. It was a revelation, honestly. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd been suppressing in my marriage until I was in a relationship where I didn't have to. Sarah and Mark had adjusted to the divorce better than I'd expected. They'd been angry at first, especially Mark. He'd wanted to confront Richard, to yell at him, to make him understand the pain he'd caused. I'd discouraged it, knowing it wouldn't change anything, would just create more conflict and pain. But eventually they'd processed their emotions and come to terms with the new reality. They'd visited me regularly, called frequently, made sure I knew they loved me and supported me. They'd met David and approved. Happy to see me happy, glad I'd found someone who treated me well. Sarah had confided in me recently that the divorce had actually helped her. She'd been in a relationship that wasn't working, staying in it because she thought that's what you did, that you stuck things out even when you were unhappy. Watching me leave Richard, watching me choose myself, had given her permission to do the same. She'd ended her unhealthy relationship and was now with someone who treated her with respect and kindness. "You taught me that it's okay to have standards," she'd told me. "That it's okay to expect to be treated well. That settling for less than you deserve isn't noble, it's just sad." Mark had learned something too. He'd watched his father's behavior and its consequences and made a conscious decision to be different. He was in a serious relationship now, and he treated his girlfriend with consideration and respect. He communicated openly, shared responsibilities equally, made sure she knew she was valued. "I saw what Dad did to you," he'd told me. "I saw how he took you for granted, how he expected you to just accept whatever he did. I never want to be that kind of man. I never want someone I love to feel the way you felt. So maybe some good had come from all of this. Maybe my pain had taught my children valuable lessons. Maybe my decision to stand up for myself had shown them that it's never too late to choose dignity, to demand respect, to walk away from situations that diminish you." Richard had tried to reconnect several times over the past 2 years. Beyond the perfume bottle and the note, he'd sent emails, left voicemails, even shown up at the library once where I worked. Each time, his message was the same. He was sorry. He'd made a terrible mistake. He wanted another chance. Each time my answer was the same: no. Because here's what Richard never understood. It wasn't about whether I could forgive him. Forgiveness was something I was working on for myself, not for him. It was about letting go of the anger and resentment that were weighing me down, not about giving him absolution or a clean slate. The real issue was trust. He'd destroyed it, completely and thoroughly. And trust, once broken that badly, can't be repaired. I could never again believe anything he said. I could never again feel safe in a relationship with him. I could never again be vulnerable with someone who'd proven he'd use that vulnerability against me. And beyond trust, there was respect. Or rather, the lack of it. Richard had shown me, through his actions, that he didn't respect me. He'd thought I was too naive to catch him. He'd thought I was too dependent to leave him. He'd thought I was too scared to stand up for myself. He'd been wrong on all counts. But the fact that he'd thought those things at all told me everything I needed to know about how he truly saw me. I deserved better than that. I deserved a partner who saw me as an equal, who valued my contributions, who respected my intelligence and strength. Whether that partner was David or someone else, or no one at all, I deserved better than what Richard had given me. The last time Richard had tried to contact me was 6 months ago. He'd sent a long letter, handwritten, detailing all his regrets and all the ways he'd changed. He'd gone to therapy. He'd done the work. He'd become a better person. He wanted me to know that, wanted me to be proud of him, wanted me to see that he'd learned from his mistakes. I'd read the letter once, then put it in a drawer and never looked at it again. I was glad he was in therapy. I was glad he was working on himself. But none of that changed the past. None of that erased the pain he'd caused. And none of that meant I owed him anything, not my time, not my energy, certainly not another chance. I'd moved on. I'd built a new life, found new joy, become a new person. Richard was part of my past, an important part that had shaped me, but he wasn't part of my present or my future. He was a chapter that had closed, a book I'd finished reading, a story that was over. Looking at that perfume bottle in the recycling bin, I felt a sense of finality. This was truly the end. No more artifacts from our marriage. No more reminders of what had been or what might have been. Just forward momentum, just the future, just possibility. I stood up from the kitchen table, grabbed my purse and keys, and headed for the door. David was expecting me. We were going to cook dinner together, try a new recipe, maybe watch a movie afterward. Simple, ordinary, perfect. As I locked the door behind me, I looked back at my house one last time. It looked different than it had 2 years ago. I'd redecorated, painted walls, rearranged furniture, made it truly mine. It was no longer the house I'd shared with Richard. It was my house, my sanctuary, my space. I got in my car, a new car I'd bought with my divorce settlement, not anything flashy, just reliable and completely mine, and pulled out of the driveway. The evening sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, and I was alive to see it, free to enjoy it, able to appreciate it without the weight of betrayal and lies dragging me down. I thought about that moment when I'd found the perfume in Richard's briefcase. That moment had changed everything. It had destroyed the life I thought I had, but it had also saved me from wasting more years in a marriage that was slowly killing my spirit. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is also the best thing. Sometimes rock bottom is the solid foundation you need to build something better. Sometimes losing everything means you finally have room to gain what really matters. I drove through my town, past familiar landmarks, toward David's house, and toward whatever came next. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe David and I would work out long-term. Maybe we wouldn't. Maybe I'd spend the rest of my life single and happy. Maybe I'd fall in love again with someone else. What I did know was that I was okay either way. I'd learned that I didn't need someone else to complete me, to validate me, to give my life meaning. I was complete on my own. Any relationship I chose to be in from now on would be because I wanted it, not because I needed it. I'd learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could survive betrayal and come out the other side, that I could stand up for myself, fight for myself, choose myself, that I could rebuild from nothing and create something beautiful. I'd learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, wasn't what healed me. What healed me was self-respect, community, growth, forgiveness. Not of Richard, but of myself for staying too long, for ignoring red flags, for settling for less than I deserved. I'd learned that it's never too late to start over. At 52 years old, I was beginning again, and it was scary and exciting and full of possibility. I had years ahead of me, decades maybe, and they were mine to design however I wanted. As I pulled into David's driveway, I saw him through the kitchen window. He was cooking, chopping vegetables, moving around his kitchen with easy confidence. He saw my car and waved, a huge smile on his face, genuinely happy to see me. That's what I deserved, that genuine happiness, that uncomplicated affection, that simple, honest connection. I got out of the car and walked toward his door, toward dinner, toward laughter, toward a future I was actively choosing rather than one that was happening to me. And as I walked, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of Richard, of our failed marriage, of all that pain and betrayal, was finally, completely gone. I was free, and I was never looking back. What did you think of this story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It always amazes me to see how far these stories reach. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable, you can help me continue creating more content like this by sending a super thanks. Your support means everything to me and allows me to keep sharing these life lessons with you. I can't wait to read your comments and hear how this story resonated with you. Right now on your screen, you'll see 2 more compelling life stories that I think you'll really enjoy. My channel is filled with stories just like this one. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a new story. I'll see you very soon in the next one. Sending you love and respect.